Finally. Hello? Fu said into the camera. Can you hear us? A new stream. Yes. We can hear you, oh blank-faced one. Where Kiba? Okay, it looks like it's working, Fu said. Finally. Kiba said, standing behind him. The two were standing in the training room, with the camera set up in the middle so it could view the whole room. Hello my loyal servants, welcome back to my home. Kiba said. Recently we got a new, what's the word, batch. We got a new batch of siblings. Batch of siblings? So their dad is adopting them. Is he buying them in bulk or something? What the heck is going on? Do you think we should explain the whole thing about dad? Fu asked. No, my subjects are clever. I'm certain they can figure it out. Kiba waved her hand, dismissing the matter. Anyhow, while we will introduce you to most of our new siblings. I have yet to meet Mu as of yet. No one has seen Mu yet. He could be anywhere and no one would know. Fu commented. Ghost boy? Phantom child? Spooky boy? Yes but also no, Fu said. Nothing is simple in this house. Yup. Kiba confirmed with a grin. Now brother, show them our new baby brother. Ah, babies, I love babies. Cute baby boy. Why do I have a feeling this is not gonna be a cute little baby? Then, from Fu's chest came a black, slimy mass that formed in the shape of a ball, about the size of one of the kids' heads. Then two white slits formed around the top of the ball, and then it split open, revealing jagged, sharp white teeth. It looked as if one of Yami's half-formed grim was coming out of Fu's chest. What the fuck? Ah! Yeah, that's about what I expected. Why is everything in this house so terrifying? Queen Crimson, what are you talking about? It's adorable. Hey, don't call my cute baby brother terrifying. Kiba pouted, hugging the slime. He is actually very adorable. Hissus. Kyosei let out a demonic hiss in response. Oh, she's one of those kinds of girls. You mean the awesome kind? Why is it on Fu? I'm so glad you asked. You see Kyosei's quirk is called symbiote. Kiba mispronounced. Symbiote. Fu corrected. And it lets him bond to a host, making them stronger, tougher, faster, and all sorts of exciting things. Kiba was practically bouncing on her heels as she said this. And the only cost is that it eats your organs and makes you go insane by increasing your emotional, sensitivity. Fu filled in the blank. Sensitivity. Kiba finished. Yeah, only. Such small insignificant drawbacks. So Fu is perfect. He regenerates and his emotions don't work anyway. I still feel emotions. Just not as much. Fu corrected. Enough explaining. My subjects did not come to hear me explain what Kyosei does, they want to see what he does. Kiba said, getting impatient. So let's just do this already. Fu rolled his eyes, but he could feel that Kyosei wanted to do the same. Not that he was eager to hurt Kiba, in fact, the sludge boy was quite fond of her. Whether that be from Fu's own fondness of Kiba or because of Kiba's fondness of him or a combination of the two. No, one thing Fu learned about Kyosei is that he liked to be active, much like Sansan. He wasn't sure if that was an inherent thing about people with quirks like theirs, he'd have to talk to Izuku about it. He very much enjoyed the prospect of battling Kiba, because it meant lots and lots of activity. Kiba moved to one end of the room, eager and ready. Fu moved to the other end of the room. Kyosei started to spread around him, completely encompassing him until he was completely encompassed in black. Kyosei's eyes appeared on his head and his sharp-toothed jaw appeared over his mouth. He really does look like a grim. Badass. All Might Fan 2033, please don't curse on my daughter's stream. Oh, shit, daddy's here. What did he just say? Sorry, sir. You should change your username, it's really generic. All Might Fan 2033, I know. So does Fu fight using Kyosei like a suit or does Kyosei fight using Fu as a meat puppet? All Might Fan 2033, according to my files, both. Wow, nothing really is simple in this house. Files? Not wasting any more time, Kiba charged towards Fu, not quite at full speed but still at speeds way faster than your average person, or vehicle for that matter. Normally, Fu would never be able to react to this, and Kiba's fist would fly through his head and shatter it like someone shooting a cannon at a pumpkin. However, the power Kyosei offered made things different. It's like everything slowed down, and he could react so much faster. So when Kiba got close, he was able to grab her out of the air and throw her at a wall. Kiba grinned. Finally, Fu could give her a proper fight. So she didn't need to hold back. Fu's black fist enlarged to twice the size of his head, and then launched it at Kiba, extending his arms similarly to Sanson. Kiba easily dodged the attack and ran at him once more, this time at full speed. Splush! Fu couldn't react this time, and Kiba punched through his torso, causing black goo, blood, and guts to fly everywhere. You know, out of context this would be horrifying. This is horrifying in any context. You know, for a stream run by a child who's not even 10 years old, it is not family friendly here. Queen Crimson, I love it here. The zombie boy looked down at the giant hole in his side, black goop filled the wound, and he felt himself regenerate. Much faster than he normally did. Does Kaiosei make my regeneration faster too? Fu wondered. Pay attention, was all Fu heard before his head was blasted open like a watermelon. In seconds his head was back to normal, only to see Kiba charging toward him again. Kaiosei took control and made Fu duck, avoiding Kiba's punch. Then a fist came out of his chest and punched Kiba in the face. Which barely did anything. That hurt a little. Kiba smiled, pushing away the fist. And then she grabbed on both of Fu's arms and ripped him in half. All Might Fan 2033, huh, Fu can't win this fight. Huh? Daddy shows who his favorite is. All Might Fan 2033, what no? I just mean that Fu literally cannot win this fight. Kiba can't do any permanent damage to him because of his regeneration. Fu brought his two halves together and punched Kiba right in the face. But his regeneration doesn't last forever, and eventually, he'll need to intake more meat. But he can barely do any damage to Kiba. The punch landed, but Kiba stood her ground, the blow only making her head bob back a bit. And she is too fast and strong for him to keep landing hits. Fu threw out another punch, but Kiba caught that one, and grabbed his other fist, before kicking him in the chest and sending him flying into the farthest wall. Without his arms, his only real advantage is a possible range advantage. As Kiba ran towards Fu, from his arm stumps came a barrage of slick black tentacles that extended out and grabbed Kiba, attempting to restrain her. But he's too inexperienced to use it properly against someone this strong. Kiba easily broke free of the tentacles and started punching her way through the rest of them. Sure, Kiba's strength is also limited, but when fighting Fu, Kiba charged through the tentacles and came at Fu with her teeth bared, and when she got into range she took a huge bite into Fu's neck, drinking from his blood so roughly that she nearly took his head off. He is an endless supply of blood. And so the battle went on, as Izuka predicted. Fu kept trying to hurt Kiba, but the vampire girl simply ripped and tore him and Kaiosei apart. Anytime Kiba felt her strength waning, she would simply tear off his head and drink from his skull. It was an almost literal bloodbath. But all the while, Kiba was having fun. Because she was actually trying. Fu kept trying new tricks, turning Kaiosei into spikes, hammers, huge hands, throwing her around. Eventually, he tried moving around on the walls to try and evade her. Sure had harder fights, but the fact that fighting Fu was exciting for once, put a smile on her face. At long last, he was more than a punching bag. An hour and 47 minutes later, blood and gore had covered the walls, floor, and ceiling of the training room. Most of the metal had been covered in red, and organs and guts, sometimes in pieces and sometimes just not. Queen Crimson, it's paradise. Heaven. This is why I love Kiba. Ah. Oh come on, if you are not used to a cartoonish amount of blood and violence, then why are you even here? All Might Fan 2033, on one hand I'm grateful that Fu's here so the kids have someone to train against that they can't murder, on the other hand, I dislike just how used to gore and violence they've gotten. Kiba was panting with exhaustion, a huge grin still on her face. Fu meanwhile, while unable to feel exhaustion and physically fine, knew he was beat. He could feel his meat reserves bottoming out. If he didn't get any more meat inside of him soon, then he would go into a frenzy. It was time to call it quits. We're done. Fu surrendered, urging Kaiosei to travel back into his body. We give up. The brain, well it seems Mr. Midoriya's analysis was correct. Queen Crimson, it's over already. Ah, already that went on for almost 2 hours. Not like anyone is complaining. All Might Fan 2033, it's not like Fu would be incapable of winning a fight against Kiba. He just doesn't know how to use Kaiosei to his fullest yet. If he could, he might find a way to do more damage or hold her off better. The brain, very adept Mr. Midoriya. One day I'm sure he'll be a fine hero. As will Miss Kiba. All Might Fan 2033, thank you Principal Nizu. Holy shit, Nizu's here. The brain, I recall he asked for no cursing. Sorry sirs. We apologize to our future mouse/bear overlord. The brain, you are forgiven, for now. Kiba ran up to her brothers and wrapped them in a hug. That was great Fu. You too Kaiosei. Truly worthy of being called my siblings. Please don't squeeze too hard. I need to eat more. Fu reminded her. All Might Fan 2033, don't worry. I already started making an entire feast when this battle started. Brain worm, but don't you have work to do daddy? Another kid? All Might Fan 2033, don't worry Kyoku, I'll be fine. I just have to do it after. You all come first. Always. Hog dad. Good parenting. Not something you see a lot from rich parents. Gotta put the babies first. Parent Haplopete, I could have helped. All Might Fan 2033, you would have left your room? Pyron Haplopete, can I have a stove in my room? All Might Fan 2033, no. Well let us hurry. Caretaker has prepared a feast for us. Kiba said after checking her chat. All Might Fan 2033, yup. And then after you eat, you can clean up the training room. Fu and Kiba looked up at the filthy training room, and blood still dripped from the walls and pieces of flesh, bones, and organs dropping from the ceiling and landing in the shallow pools of blood on the floor with a loud, wet, plop. The sounds of Kiba's anguish rang throughout the Midoriya house the entire evening. A matter of pride. Thank you for coming in. Izuka thanked Recovery Girl, as the elderly hero did her work on Kiba and Netsu in their med bay. You're welcome dear. With quirks like these, it's no surprise they'd end up hurting each other like this eventually. Recovery Girl said. Yeah, I figured this would happen eventually. Izuka sighed as he remembered how this happened. Hours ago, in the training room. Haha. Yeah. Netsu laughed as he unleashed his fiery wrath upon some specially ordered tungsten targets. Fireball after fireball hitting various parts of the targets, and some missing them and hitting the wall behind it, still not melting it. It felt nice to have targets he couldn't destroy in one blast. This room was awesome. It was so much bigger than his small room back at the DOC complex, so he could train without worrying about burning up all the oxygen. He could train without restraint. Speaking of no restraint, it was time he took it up a level. Super Heatwave Burning Blast. Netsu shouted out his special attack name. Whoosh! A big burst of flames shot out of Netsu's arm and fully encompassed half of the room. When the flames died down, he was happy to see that the room and everything in it were fine, despite his intense flames. Well, you didn't disappoint. Netsu looked at the doorway, the source of the voice, and found Kiba standing there with a big grin on her face. Allow me to introduce myself. I am the great Kiba Midoriya, Queen of Eternal Darkness. Kiba introduced herself. Oh, you're one of my new sisters. Netsu said excitedly. Nice to meet ya. Name's Netsu. And I'm gonna be the #1 hero in the future. Kiba scoffed. Apologies brother, but that title will go to me. Nah, I'm gonna be the strongest in the world because my quirk is amazing. Netsu argued. My quirk is obviously better. Kiba disagreed. Well, then why don't we see who's stronger? Netsu punched his palm. With a fight. Kiba gave a vicious grin. What a wonderful idea. In 5 seconds I am going to punch you into the ceiling. Let's see if you can do that before my flames oh. Netsu wasn't able to continue his sentence, as Kiba did what she said, and gently uppercut him into the ceiling. And that was only the start of the fight. A minute later Kay walked in. Hey, guys RO. What she walked in on was Kiba literally bouncing off the walls, trying her hardest to dodge Netsu's all-encompassing fire blast and failing for the most part. Fortunately for her she had quite the heat resistance. Note despite having significant heat resistance, that didn't mean she didn't feel hot. As such, this was terribly painful. What's going on in here? Fu came up to the door and immediately backed away once he saw the large amount of fire being shot out. He could hear Kaiosei crying out in fear, urging him to run away from the fire. It's okay. I won't let it near us. Fu reassured it. After calming it down, Fu turned back to the fight. Wow, they're really strong. Kay stared in awe at the two's intense fighting. Honestly, it's more impressive that they haven't killed each other. Fu scowled. While an impressive spectacle, it was easy to see that this had gotten out of hand. All of Kiba's clothes were burned off. Fortunately she was not wearing her cloak, and had large burns all over her body and some burned hair. Netsu on the other hand was also hurting. They couldn't actually see any wounds on his body, but they could practically feel the pain with every blow Kiba landed on him. As Fu stated, it really was a miracle that neither of them had killed the other. So should we stop this? Kei asked. Ah! Kiba shrieked as she got caught in a really powerful fire blast. Yeah, we really should, Fu said. Like, now. Gah! Netsu shouted as he was punched in the gut, hard. If one looked close enough, they could see bits of blood fly out of his mouth before evaporating. The kids could feel the heat rising in the room as the fight got more and more intense. Fu had to back away further and further from the door. Hey! Stop! You're fighting too hard, Kei shouted. No, they both shouted stubbornly. Kei turned to Fu. Should we get Dad? Fu shook his head and faced Kei towards the room. No, that will take too long, they might hurt each other more. Let's do this. Hey, Dad's here. Huh? Both kids looked at the doorway, only to see Kei, with her visor lifted up. Back to the present. Do you two have any idea how worried I was? If it wasn't for your brother and sister turning you to stone, then you two might have killed each other. Izuku shouted at the two children whose head hung low with shame. But it didn't hurt that Kiba was interrupted by a coughing fit, joined by Netsu, who also went into a coughing fit. Do you know why you're coughing? Izuku said. Because you breathed in so much smoke during that fight, that it's affecting your lungs. You're lucky that Fu and Kei stopped you when you did, or you two could have gotten serious lung damage, or died from the smoke inhalation. Or you could have just died from beating each other up. With these injuries, if you hadn't been stopped and turned to stone when you were, then there definitely would have been some permanent injuries. Recovery Girl warned them. And if your injuries had gotten worse, then it's possible you would have damaged your bodies to the point where you couldn't be heroes anymore. Both children looked horrified, however after a few moments Kiba spoke. But what about Eri? She could fix us. Or she could wipe you from existence. Izuku glared at both the children harshly. Or turn you into babies, or monkeys, or take your quirks away. Eri is just learning how to turn her quirk on and off. No one knows how long it could take for Eri to safely control her quirk and use it on a living person. Kiba became dejected, and both children were now thoroughly ashamed of themselves. Izuku took a moment to collect himself, calming himself down before he continued. Kiba, Netsu is not like all the other kids you spar with. Fu, Sanson, and Kai can take your punches, he can't. And fire is very dangerous. Not just because it can burn you, but it can suffocate you, and the smoke can cause lung damage and death. Neither of you can just fight each other at full power, without doing serious harm to each other. Sorry, Dad. Netsu apologized. Sorry, Daddy. Kiba dropped her typical act. There was a long pause, as everyone waited for Izuku to speak. But, Kiba, I do have to give you some credit for holding back enough not to kill or seriously damage him. Izuku acknowledged, making the girl feel a little bit better. At least your restraint training is working. Izuku turned to Netsu. I told you that you could train a little bit with some of the special equipment I ordered and marked especially for you. Not that you could overuse you and use it on one of the other kids. Sorry, Dad, Netsu repeated, remembering the specific instructions that were given to him earlier and how he failed to follow them. You could not only have killed someone else but yourself. Using your powers to their fullest while indoors will burn up all the oxygen and suffocate you to death. Izuku reminded him. Or the smoke will kill you. You've been told this before. I got excited. The training room was big and it didn't melt, I wasn't thinking. Netsu once again apologized. Izuku sighed, drinking some calming tea to ease his nerves. Okay, alright. Before you can train with most of the others, you need to go through some extensive quirk training. And Kiba, before you can train with Netsu, the both of you need to wait until you have better control over your quirks. For now, Kiba stick with training with Sanson, Fu, Kai, and maybe some of the Grim if Yami can make some spares. And Netsu, stick with training with Kai, and maybe some Grim. He can't train with Sanson? Kiba asked curiously. She understood why he couldn't train with Fu now that he had a new aversion to fire, but Sanson was made of water, or rather good, but it was watery, so it shouldn't be a problem. When liquids, like what Sanson is made of, are heated up too much, they do what's called evaporating, and turn into gas and mist and things, Izuku explained with the patience he had left. Now I'm not sure if that would kill her, but I don't want to take chances. So stick to training with Kai. Not at full power, his scales are only so fire resistant. Yes, Dad. Netsu nodded. And both of you are grounded for a week and a half, Izuku told them sternly. And no exercising during that time either. You two are going to rest your bodies until about 2 weeks. Recovery Girl said. Until 2 weeks have passed. Izuku finished. Izuku looked down at his saddened and demoralized children and felt a pang of guilt. He knew he needed to do it, but he didn't like it. He carefully hugged both the children, making sure that he, A, didn't hug too hard and B, that he hugged the parts of Netsu covered by his fireproof clothing. It was still hot, but it didn't burn him. You both have such powerful quirks. Gifts. But with that power, comes responsibility. You have to learn to use less of it, otherwise, you'll end up killing someone one day. Izuku told them. I understand that it's hard. It might feel like you're living in a world made of cardboard sometimes. Always careful not to break something. Break someone. But it's what needs to be done so that way one day, you can be the heroes you want to be. The heroes I know you can be. Neither of the children hugged back. Not because they didn't want to, but because Kiba's skin was sensitive right now, and because Netsu was still on fire. But they both nudged themselves into Izuku's embrace. Is this what a hug feels like? Netsu wondered. It's nice. The hug lasted a bit longer before the moment was ruined when the door was literally thrown off its hinges, and Shiroku entered. And she was not happy. You burned my dress. The spider girl yelled in outrage. Izuku sighed. It never ends, does it? Where do Sansons come from? Izuku put down his phone and wiped the sweat from his brow. Alright, so that's the food for this month taken care of now, to order Shiroku's materials. Knock knock knock. Was the sound of someone banging on his office door. Dad, can we come in? Asked the energetic voice of Netsu. Okay, Izuku said, then taking a drink of water while also downing his anti-headache medication. The door opened, and in walked Netsu and Fu came walking in. Hey, Dad. How does Sanson have babies? Netsu asked immediately. Izuku spat out his drink. What? Netsu was about to repeat it, but Fu shoved one of his hands, which he had already torn off, into his mouth to shut him up. We were showing Netsu our notebook, and all the cool quirks around. And then we started talking about Sanson. Fu explained. And we were wondering how Sanson gets pregnant. With new context, Izuku now properly understood the question at hand. It was an understandable one too. Izuku himself had wondered the exact same thing until eventually, he got the reports on how it worked. Fortunately, Izuku had already explained the birds and the bees to pretty much all the children during their lessons. Now one might say it's too soon to do such a thing. But Izuku had his reasons. One reason mainly. Because of animal quirks. You see, when a person got an animal quirk, it often came with animalistic habits. Sometimes, including some form of heat, often occurring before that person reaches the proper age. This has led to many issues in both the past and present, and for a while was the reason for many negative perceptions of people with animal quirks in the past, that would eventually turn into the creature rejection clan and other discriminatory groups. Izuku had absolutely no doubt that in his line of work and with his luck, he would have to deal with at least one kid going into heat, and as such it was better that he informed the other children of what these things were and how to properly react to them, rather than having an animal child in heat jump them and convince them to do a thing they shouldn't be doing because they don't know any better. Plus, with the internet and Kyoku, who was already aware of such things, around, it was probably a fruitless endeavor to hide such things from them anyway. Okay, so Sanson actually can't get pregnant. Izuku started to explain. What happens is, when she gets older, at some point her acid will temporarily become non-corrosive. What does that mean? Netsu asked. It means it won't burn through anything, Izuku explained. So it's like when we give her the chemical? Fu asked. Exactly, the chemical actually forces her body into that state early. Izuku continued. But when that happens, she'll be able to slide herself into a woman's passage and leave a part of her body inside there to fertilize the eggs and have a baby. Both kids took in that information and thought about what that implied. Wait. Netsu thought. Does that mean Sanson is made of dash? Fu shoved another hand inside his mouth to shut him up. Does that mean that Sanson is, technically a boy? Fu asked. Izuku held in a breath. How to explain this? Because technically speaking he wasn't wrong, while technically neither gender, she was closer, biologically speaking, to a male than a female, if only because of the way she reproduced. But Sanson is Sanson, Izuku told him, giving him a pat on the head. She can be whatever she wants to be. If she says she's a girl, then she's a girl. Fu thought about that for a moment, before shrugging. I guess you're right. But you didn't answer my question, Netsu spoke after turning the hand to Ash. Is she made of dash? Hey, Netsu, can you go give Kai a fire bath? Fu, why don't you go watch him? Izuku said, quickly changing the topic. Okay, let's go, Fu said, also not wanting Netsu to finish his sentence. Using more ripped-off hands, so he didn't have to touch him directly, he pushed Netsu out of the room and shut the door. Izuku gave a sigh of relief and got up to clean the water and blood from Fu ripping off his hands that was now on his floor. One thing Izuku had always found fascinating and embarrassing, how quirks affected the reproductive abilities of a person. Because while many things about quirks are unknown, one thing that has been consistent about them is that they did not make reproduction impossible. They could make it difficult, or complicated, or just straight up weird. But never impossible. Even the people who seemingly could never have children because of their quirks, still could in the right conditions or with the right partner. Nature finds a way. Don't do drugs. It was late at night, meaning that most of the kids were now asleep. Except for of course the ones who typically stayed active during the night. Two such kids were Fu and Kyosei. Fu could feel Kyosei urge him to eat. After the good child had figured out how his regeneration worked, he had been insistent that they consume things on a consonant bias, so it could maintain its infinite food source. We're going to eat, don't worry. Fu reassured his body mate. As they walked towards the kitchen, they heard someone rustling around, and saw that the lights were on. Looks like Fukunoko is in the kitchen again, Fu said. While many of the children haven't actually seen Fukunoko on account of her almost never leaving her room, but Fu had been one of the few that was not Eri in K to have seen her quite a few times. Fukunoko liked to visit the kitchen at night, and seeing Fu also frequented the kitchen at basically any time, he had seen glimpses of the girl on multiple occasions. Of course, he had never actually talked to her or even approached her. He had heard she was easily spooked, and an undead boy didn't seem like a good person to bring her out of her shell. However, now, they were hungry. And Kyosei wouldn't let that stand. Guess I'll just try not to freak her out, Fu said. As he walked into the kitchen, as quietly as he could, he saw Fuku taking something out of the oven. Cookies. Chocolate chip. He waited for a moment for her to put the tray down so she didn't drop it in case he scared her. Hello, Fu said, trying not to seem intimidating. Ah! Fuku jumped back. Fortunately, she had already put down the tray. Please don't hurt me. I won't. Fu tried to reassure her. I'm another kid that lives here. My name is Fu. FF Fu? Fuku repeated fearfully. WH, what do you want? I came here to eat - Fu was interrupted. Me? You came to eat me? Fuku kept backing away but hit a wall. And with Fu in front of the entrance, it seems like she had no hope of running away. Please. Don't hurt me. Poof. Fuku's eyes went wide, as she accidentally unleashed her quirk. Fear gas filling the room. No. Don't breathe it in. Please. Too late, Fu said, seemingly unaffected by the gas. Your quirk probably doesn't work on me, that happens sometimes. Fuku looked at him with disbelief. What? Fu took out his notebook. Your quirk is fear gas. I don't feel fear, so that's probably why it doesn't work. And my quirk doesn't work on you? Fuku's expression turned from disbelief to amazement. And my quirk doesn't work on you? Yeah, sorry. Fu said. Not sorry. This is amazing. There's someone who my stupid quirk doesn't work on. Fuku cheered, as the gas started to dissipate. Oh, do you not like your quirk either? Fu asked her. No. It's terrible and only makes bad things happen. Fuku went back to seeming like she was going to cry for a second. But if it doesn't work on you, then that means that Fuku started shuffling her feet and got really sheepish, as nervous sweat dripped down her face. He waited for a while as Fuku tried to work up the nerve to ask a question. SSS so mama maybe we CCC could BBFR friends. Fuku looked like she was about to have a panic attack with each word she said. She quickly picked up a cookie and offered it to him. Why, you can have these cookies I baked. No, stupid Fuku. Why would he want you stupid cookies? They probably taste terrible and will make him hate you and dash. It's okay, I'll take it. Fu took the cookie to try and calm her down. Of course, he wouldn't be able to taste it, but if it would make her feel better, then why not? He took a bite. And then his world changed. Little did Fu know that the chemicals inside of chocolate were very, very good for Kyosei. And so when he took a bite and chemicals traveled down to the goop child, Kyosei would reward Fu by making him experience pleasurable sensations. In normal cases, this would just result in any chocolate tasting like it was the food of the gods, but since Fu couldn't taste anything, this just caused an unnatural amount of dopamine to flood his brain. This would cause formerly dead parts of his brain to jolt back to life temporarily like they were struck by lightning. In short, chocolate equals a drug-like reaction in Fu. Suddenly the boy's face became more expensive than it had been in years, as his eyes went and became absolutely starstruck. For a few seconds, he was frozen, and when he moved again, he was no longer himself. Fu absolutely devoured his cookie, shoving it into his mouth whole, chewing it with reckless abandon. Once he was done with that, he started moving his head around wildly. More! More! EAP! Fuku backed up into the wall in fear as Fu's eyes turned completely dark, becoming nothing more than an animal. A chocolate hunting animal. His eyes landed on the cookies, and he leapt towards them. Fuku could only watch in horror as Fu slowly turned into a slick black monster. Bits of cookie went flying everywhere, only to get grabbed by tentacles and shoved into now spiky Fu's maw. By the time he was done, there was not even a crumb left. Out of chocolate, Fu looked around frantically for more, not finding anything until his eyes landed on the terrified Fukunoko. He lunged at her, grabbing her by her collar into the air. Where is it? Tell me, whe-. Fortunately for Fuku, the rush he got from eating chocolate, without any more to sustain the high wear off fairly quickly. This caused his brain to completely shut off, killing him, temporarily, before his quirk activated and revived him, but still left him, and Kyosei, completely unconscious. Kyosei was absorbed back into his body, and he fell over. Fuku stared at him in shock for a few moments, before also falling over unconscious. Fortunately, Izuku had been watching this on the cameras the whole time, and Fu was promptly banned from eating chocolate, and Fu spent the entire next week apologizing to Fuku.